Longer Ray 5, got it right here. I've done quite a few videos on with this laser because I use it for quite a few different things. I've also have the Longer B1 along with a bunch of other lasers as well. But what I'm going to do here is, as they say, go big or go home. I'm going to put the extension kit on here. I ordered the big extension kit to make a 850 millimeter square working area. I have a large project coming up here shortly, and I need a large working area, and I thought this would be a good candidate for it because Longer does make this kit. It's not going to be really easy. It's not just a little 10-minute job, because what I'm going to have to do is disassemble this laser pretty much completely, including taking all the wiring off the motherboard and putting everything onto the extension kit. No, I have not done this yet, but I'm going to take you along for the ride on it. And then in a future video, I'll show you how I'm going to make a really big spoil board for this. And I may have to move a few things off my saw table here where I do most of my work. I know for sure I'm going to have to take this off of here and put it elsewhere while I assemble this. But first I need to get into the Ray 5 as it is and disassemble it. Okay, what I'm going to start out with here is taking all the wiring and everything loose here. I'll cut all my wire ties. And then I'll be taking the air assist hose off. I'll take the laser head off. And then I'll move on to taking the rest of the wiring off of here. That's going to be my first step. This is the new one will come with another wiring harness. If you're doing this, make sure you're careful with your stepper motor connectors as you unplug them so that you don't bend any pins or anything. Same with the limit switch connections. You have to be very careful there. I have the 20-watt head on this one. You have to save all your hardware. Don't be throwing any hardware away because you're going to need to put this back together on the extension. Also be careful when you're taking this out. Again, you don't bend the pins and don't damage anything on here. I did take the air assist hose off because the new air assist is, well, I'm going to have to clean that. I guess while I got it off, it'd be a good time to do that. It's also handy to have a little magnetic tray or a little tray of some kind like this to put all your parts and pieces in. You're going to need all that hardware. If you don't think you can remember where everything goes, take a few pictures. Although I have looked at the reassembly sheet and they do tell you what size hardware to use on everything. So what I'm going to do next here is get the rest of this wiring harness off of here. I do need to disconnect my limit switch. And be careful with the limit switches. They are not the most rugged things in the world. You want to make sure you don't break them. And while I have this upside down, I will remove the limit switches because those will be reused on the other laser. And I'm using these ball drivers here. You can certainly use a regular alien wrench for that. Don't lose your T-nuts. And there's no reason to take the T-nut clear off because you're going to be putting it back into the other rail. There are some stops on the sides. There's one right here, and there's another one up here on the X carriage. You're going to need to take those off and retain them. Don't lose the little spacer that's in there. So don't lose that little spacer, that little nylon stop. And also, while I have this upside down, I'm going to take off the legs. First, I'm going to go put this somewhere I don't get it damaged. Okay, along with the legs, I need to remove the motherboard, the controller, whatever you want to call it there. Again, make sure you retain all of your hardware. That is a different size. If you remove the controller, keep in mind that you don't damage this right here. That's your flame sensor. And we are eventually going to be opening this up to take this wiring harness off and put the new one on. But for now, I'll just set this off to the side. And I can proceed to take off the other 3 legs. Okay, with this flip back over the legs off, you're going to need to grab a hold of your timing belt adjusters and screws, and don't lose those. Like I said, you're going to reuse all this hardware. I almost forgot one of my stops there. Next, you can take out the corner screws. I'm on the back side right here. It doesn't matter if you're doing the front or the back. Now on the inside corners, you've got a little bracket. You need to loosen the screws up on those with the right driver. Now you don't need to take the screws clear out, you just loosen them up. That will allow you to slip the extrusion off the back. Don't lose it. Now you'll need to take these out because you're going to use them on the other frame. So from here you can just roll this right off the frame, like so. And we're going to be doing some disassembly on this too. I'm going to set that off to the side. I'm going to flip this back around. And we have to do the same thing on the other end here. Take out the timing belt screws, the corner screws, and the corner brackets. You got to save all those parts. Okay, on the X-axis part here is a little coupling on each end. Coupling on the end of the stepper motor, then a sprocket on the other end. You're going to need to remove this, or loosen these screws up. These little set screws. You can slide that back, take it off. You're going to need that, don't throw it away. And the other end just slips out. I believe we're going to need that sprocket too. Now, here you're going to need to take off your timing belt screws just like we did on the main frame. Don't lose the parts there. Now you need to take out the screws on the end right here. There's a big one in the center here, and there's one on each side that may not need, the side ones may not need to come off. I'll have to see how this works here with the right size driver. Now you don't need to take the side screws off, just the main one in the center. So that'll slip off with your stepper motor there. And don't forget there's a stop rod there you're going to need to put on the other frame. So don't lose that. And you can slide off the laser mount. And you'll need to take this bracket off the other end as well. And don't lose the washers. So these are the components right here you'll be retaining along with the controller, which is out of camera view here. You're going to need this sprocket off this rod. The new rod will be longer. So make sure you save that. So these other parts over here we will not be using, and I am going to go get the extension kit and unpack it. Okay, here's my extension kit. So you'll have belts, got some more wire ties, your wiring harnesses. This will be your X-axis rod. And I'll take the extrusions out of here. Those were the sides on the X-axis I just took out, and here is the front and the back. And that is everything to the kit, other than a great big piece of foam. Okay, as you look at the frame pieces, the two Y-axis side frames have a recessed hole in them like this, and you'll want the 0 down here at the front, and you'll want that recessed part facing out. The X-axis frame will not have those recessed holes in it. So I'm going to start here on the front. Had them little L brackets we took off. We'll be reusing those here. So those will slip in. Then this, of course, you want the longer logo up. And then that will slip into the inside edge of this 2020 extrusion. And after you slip your L bracket in, you'll be putting a screw in from the end that goes in down through that recess. Again, it's just the exact opposite of what you took apart. Well, that makes itself a nice square corner there. Then you can retighten those little L brackets in there. Now I'll do the same on the other corner over here. All right, I've got the frame turned around so that the front is away from me. So I have the back towards me here, just because it's be able to get in and work in my space I have. So that corner over there is going to be where the controller mount is mounted. So we're going to assemble the X-axis rod here. So the first thing I'm going to put on is I want to put the stepper motor assembly back on. And if you look at your numbers on the top of the X-axis there, it'll need to face the front. Of course, in this case, it's facing away from me because the front's over there. The side with the stepper motor goes down over here. So it's just a matter of putting that screw back in right there we took out. Whoops, I grabbed the wrong screw there. Try using the right one. And next you want to put your laser mount on so the laser faces the front. So we'll just slide that on the other side over there. Now this bracket here, the one with just wheels on it, incidentally, if your laser has a whole lot of use and you've got it all taken apart here, it's a good time to check and make sure all your bearings are good. I have no problems here, just something to check while you got it apart. So I know this might end up on a camera view here, but so also while you have it up like this, don't forget your little stops with the little nylon stop spacers on them. Be one of those to go on each end. It's a good time to double check yourself to make sure that the plate is facing the same side as those stops, because that's how that works. Now I'll get my stop on the other end here. Don't over tighten these, just tighten them down till they're snug. If you tighten them too far, you'll crush that nylon spacer in there. So what we want to do now is put this on the Y-axis rails, and it's just a matter of slipping them onto the rails here and rolling it on. So it'll be like so. Now you'll have your long rod here, which is going to go across on the X-axis. Remember, you took this little guy here off. You got to put him on this end down here. And I'm not going to tighten that grub screw up in there yet, or set screw, whatever you want to call it. Just going to slip that in the hole over there. I'm going to take my split coupling. I'm going to slip it on this end here. There's a bearing on that end down there. This rod slips into the bearing. What we want to do here is get everything lined up. Make sure there's no interference anywhere. You also want to make sure you don't put this on upside down like I just did, because I'm doing everything from the back side and we didn't notice that right away. So I need to take this apart a little bit and turn that over. It goes this way, plate still faces the front. So you won't need to make that mistake because I just did it for you. Got there right away when I was starting to look at how the timing belt was going to go on and the sprocket wasn't there. Now we'll get back to putting this rod back in there. And I know you can't see this end down here, but you want those to match up. So here's our little split coupling here. We want the ends of the rod to meet. Then we just tighten those set screws back up. And then on the other end, just run that out there to, we want to line the sprocket up with the rail here because that's where our timing belt runs. Oh, next here will be the back side. Put the back on, you need your little L-shaped guys there. And it's just a matter of putting the screws back in the end and tightening up the L brackets again. And while we are over here on this side, again, this would be your left side if the front was facing you. Again, I have the front away from me, so it's on my right-hand side. You have these holes right here. That is for your stops. There's one at each end. If you don't see those holes, you've got some things put together backwards because the stepper motors for the Y-axis drive is also on this side. So make sure you get that little stop screwed in there. And the one over here too, and make sure the 0 is over here. This is the front over here, the front left corner. And while we are at the back of it, I'm going to put the back legs back on. So in case you weren't looking real close when you took yours apart, there's a little slot right there. That's where the timing belt's going to have to pass through, so you want to make sure you have it put on like so. Well, ran into a little bit of a snag here. My leg plate has to go on here so that, again, that little slot lines up with this track for the timing belt. There's 2 holes tapped in here on the end. There's 2 holes on the old leg. The problem is the innermost hole, the one closest to the outer extrusion, does not match this hole. So my options, I have a couple different ones. One is re-drill this plate. My other option is going to be to use a T-nut, and I happen to have a bunch of those, so it's not a big deal. But I don't know if you can see that or not there. The holes in here, this lines up perfect, which then lines up that T perfect. But this hole in here is not the same as my leg. It's about 3/8 of an inch off. So rather than mess around drilling stuff, I'm just going to use a T-nut on there. Well, technically it's called a hammerhead nut, but that's what I'm going to be putting in there. So I'll just slip that in, and I'm going to need a shorter screw than that. Okay, round 2 here. That over there, a bolt over here. So that's going to be my solution for these 3 corners. I'll do the same on the other side over here, then we'll get this thing turned around. Before we put the wiring harness into the motherboard here, and I'm going to do that obviously before you mount this because you won't be able to take it apart otherwise. Take a look at your laser head and where your power connection is. See if you have a 3-pin or a 5-pin. This is a 3-pin, so you want to make sure that you use a harness with a 3-pin. There's 2 different ones with a kit. So this one here, where'd my laser part go? There is a 3-pin. And on the other set, okay, this one here is the 5-pin. This one here is a 3-pin. You want to make sure you put the right one on the motherboard, or it's not going to work on your laser head. So look at your head. Again, this one here, 3-pin. Now, this is a 20-watt head. Your 20-watt head may be a 5-pin. This is an older, one of the first models out, so the new ones may be different. So take a look at your head before you put the wiring harness on. Just to clear this up on this cable, as I said, I have a very early model 20-watt, so mine is a 3-pin. If you have the later model 20-watt, it will be the 5-pin. I even got the sheet out here to look to make sure, and it's even highlighted in red right here about which ones to use. So just thought I'd point that out, clarify it. If you put the wrong cable on there, you're not going to be happy when you get to the other end and want to connect your laser module. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, you're going to need 2 M&Ms. There's 4 screws to take out on this. I have not been into this one. Yes, I have, because I put the limit switch kit on. But I've done some repairs on a few for a couple different viewers, mostly because they break off that flame sensor. There's also a Wi-Fi wire that is underneath this label right here. You're going to have to be careful when you are taking that apart so that you don't damage it. Oh, if you have a TF card on there, make sure you take it out, because you won't be able to get the motherboard or the back off of there if you still have this in there. I get everything laid off to the side right here. There's a couple different ways you can do this. You can do it one at a time, which is probably the best way if you're not familiar with this, so we'll go over it that way. It'll be the end of the cable with all the plugs on it, like that. We'll just kind of throw that over there off to the side. Now you can do these one at a time. And they're all marked. So you'll have one that'll be, well, let's see how these are marked. I did this quite a while ago, so let's see if we have a PR in here. We'll start over here with the first one, which is the X stepper motor. And right up here in the front corner is the X stepper motor. So we can unplug that one and find our X stepper motor here. There it is. These are also marked on the motherboard. Next one over here will be Y. I unplugged that so I can get this underneath this other harness. Okay, we go back to X. Then we will do Y. There's a Y1 and a Y2. They both do the same thing. That's in case you have 2 Y-axis stepper motors. We have one marked PR. That's for a limit. If you don't have limits, there's a spot on the motherboard that says probe. And there should be a signal over there. It's a 12 volt. And we got one over here for the Y limit. There's the X. We'll have one that's marked X minus. It's actually your limit switch. And that'll go, it's marked on the motherboard X minus. I'm doing this one at a time to show that, you know, this is the best way to do it if you're unsure about doing these. So what we have left then, we have one that says TTL. That's also marked on the motherboard. It's kind of a stretch here trying to get this one in. So this might be a little fiddly. Make sure you don't get your polarities backwards. Doing the 12 volt one here before I do the TTL. Boy, this is a stretch. There we go. We have one left. That's a single wire for the TTL over here. Now you can't see everything I'm doing, but as I said, everything is marked on the motherboard. It's the end of this particular harness is a little, there's not really any slack here for anything. That just snaps in there. We're all good to go there. I can get this out of my way now. This is my old one. So all we need to do now is put this back together. Now when you go to put this back on, you're going to have to kind of tilt the top of it in first, because you're going to have to get the little slot for the USB port and for the TF card. You're going to have to get that lined up, and then the back will just snap right back on, like so. Make sure that your cord is coming out in that open space. Then you can just put your screws back in. Again, be careful of the little flame sensor on the back, right here, so you don't damage that. And now we're ready to mount this on the frame. So this is just simply a matter of putting this back in the holes there. These line up just fine. And I'm going to put my card back in there while I'm thinking about it. Okay, I have this upside down. This is the control box right here. This is the corner for the Y-axis limit switch. So you're going to want to go, for the 20 watt, we're going to want to go 72 millimeters. So I'll set my caliper for that. Then you want to go from the, they call it sheet metal, but I call it the bracket there. You're going to want to make a little pencil mark, the 72 millimeter mark, which should be right here. It'll be different if it's a 5 or 10 watt. Then your limit switch will mount with the base of it right at that 72 millimeter mark. Don't over tighten that. Now we're going to have to do the same thing for the X, but it's a different dimension. I took my coupling rod back off so you can see this a little clearer. This is the X-axis limit switch, and it is 18 millimeters from the end of the rod down there. So you make a mark at 18 millimeters, and you can tighten your screw up right there. Had a little case of Project Interruptus. It's now the next day. So I'll get now to the timing belts, which are finally tangled up here. There we go. All three of them are the same length, of course. So we get to putting these things on. And if you are not familiar with putting these timing belts on, well, if you took your laser apart, you know how they go. They go under the wheel, over the sprocket, and back under the next wheel. Of course, and then another way to do it is to start with one end and go that way over the sprocket, and the other end and go that way over the sprocket. Just make sure you don't have any twists in your belt when you do that. And we'll get the end stuck through that little slot down there, a little ways, and drop the hammerhead nut, the screw back in there. Find the right tool. Like I said, find the right tool. And we'll go do the same thing at the other end. We'll stick that through the T-slot there. We'll drop our little screw back in. And down here to the other end. Through the slot. Some tension on it. You don't need to use any tools in your set and tension. And I have something wrong with the screw here. Yeah, one of the nuts is stripped out, but I have spares, so not a problem. We got the tension set good there. Eccentrics are good there, no wobbling. So I need to do the same thing on the other side. And I need to turn the laser around to do it because I can't reach that back corner. Come on, turn around in there. There we go. Again, to set this tension, pull it by hand. Don't use any tools. It isn't necessary to be cranking on there with pliers or anything. So this should now move smoothly, and it does. I'll take a minute and bring up another point here. When you're dealing with a frame that's this big, whatever you do, don't grab this by here and pick it up to move it around, because you will eventually bend this. So definitely don't grab it by the rod. I'm sure you'd bend that if you did. So what you want to be able to do when you go to move this is just kind of reach out here into the center of it to pick it up. It doesn't weigh very much. And I'm going to be putting this on a baseboard, but it will be removable. So next we're going to get up to the wiring, and I may put a drag chain on this later, but for right now I'm just going to hook up the basics. So the first thing you've got is you got a little plug down here for your limit switch, which is right underneath here. And I'll get down there and plug that guy in. These are keyed, they only go in one way. You'll also want to put a wire tie right down here, but which I will do here eventually. So what I need to do now, let's get this here. You'll have the limit switch on the y-axis, which is right there, or x-axis, which is right here, and then you'll have the plug for the stepper motor. So you will not have this on your laser unless you've bought one from me or made one. This is kind of a cable management loop. So I'm going to see how the cable management goes here. I'm definitely going to think about putting a drag chain on here because this is so long now. Then I'll bring this down here so I can get to it easier. So we got two plugs here. One is for the stepper motor, and of course the other one is for the laser module. So I'll plug my stepper motor plug in, not backwards. And I will need to go fetch my laser head. Depending on the what wattage laser you have, this is a 20 watt, and as I mentioned before, this is the early model of the 20 watt. You'll have a couple of screws to put in from the back. Then we can put our focus knobs back on, and don't forget there's supposed to be a washer on them. Okay, and of course the laser module, get that plugged in, that down through the little guide there. Again, this is the early model 20 watt. If you have a later model 20 watt, you will have used the 5-pin connector here, not the 3-pin. And wire management aside for now, because I haven't decided exactly what I'm going to do, you want to make sure that everything moves smoothly, but move things slowly now that you've got stepper motors hooked up. You want to make sure you have full travel there. Make sure you have full travel all the way to the back. Nothing sounds goofy or makes any little bumpy noises or any grinding sounds. Everything looks good there, so my next step will be to get my laptop hooked up, and we'll see if we get full motion on this. Okay, you're going to have to make some changes here on Lightburn. And of course we have a homing fail because it doesn't know what it's doing now that I got everything changed. So we got to go up here to this little wrench for one thing. And up here, we're going to change this to 850 by 850. Just like that. Now we're going to have to go to machine settings. Here, bring this up. Now we got to get down to x-axis max travel or y-axis max travel. You're going to have to double click on the output setup. Okay. X max travel. Change that to 850. Down here the y-axis max travel. That one to 850. Come on. And we want to write that. And again, the way I got to the outputs was, scroll back up here. You have to double click on that. I'll open this up again so you can see what I'm talking about. We're going to edit in your machine settings. You come, oh, I kept it open, but you won't see this down here normally. You would have to hit this and double click it. See there, that hit it again. And I brought it back up, so you have to do a double click on it. You want your X and Y max travel to be 850 millimeters. And make sure you click on write so that it writes it to it. So I'm back here in Lightburn again. I'm on the Longer Ray 5, so now I need to home this. And I'm keeping an eye on my cables because I don't have anything tied anywhere yet because I haven't decided exactly how I'm going to do this. Okay, I got a hard limit. I need to make an adjustment. Okay, I had to make an adjustment on the x-axis limit. I had to just scooch it this way just a little bit. Scooch is a technical term, by the way. So we'll turn this back on again. And we'll see if it homes okay. Haven't tried the limit on the y-axis yet. Okay, we home good. So far so good here. Lightburn, I just drew a square. It's 850 millimeters. Actually, I made 849 millimeters square. And what I'm going to do now, and I've set absolute coordinates and I have that square centered, I want to frame this. This will give me a good idea that everything is okay, and my framing speed is set slow, I know, and I'm not going to keep you through the whole framing process here. It lets me kind of take a look at everything. Just bump the stop down here on the end. See how it does on the Y. That little bump there. So I'm not getting my full 850 millimeters. See how it does coming back the other way. hard limit. So I don't have a full 850 millimeters in width here. I'm going to have to modify my square. We'll see what we got exactly. Okay, after a lot of experimenting here, I'm framing this here for the last time. My actual work area without it hitting limits and over travel and all that kind of good stuff is 800 millimeters on X and 815 millimeters on Y. I think if you had the 5 or 10 watt head on there, you would have more of the full travel. And I have to do some cable management, but I'm working on figuring that out first. So I'm going to make a layout grid for this and be 800 by 800. And it will be a light burn file. File loaded in here kind of just for test. Just a quick little line engrave, and this is just a piece of cardboard I've got laid on here, and yes, I have it focused and everything. We'll send this over here, we'll see how it does. 8,000 millimeters per minute. And I guess it would have helped if I would have turned the power up a little bit. It's at 1% power, so that's not going to do much. Well, let's stop that, we'll start over. Why is that not marking? Because now it's at 3% power instead of 30. Well, it is kind of marking it. So it did do an engrave there, just fine. Once I turned the power up, I don't know why I thought that was 30%, ended up being 3%. So I'm going to move this up a little bit. I'm going to crank up the speed and crank up the power. What I want to do is watch everything here at a higher speed. Take this up to 12,000 millimeters per minute. I doubt if I'll ever engrave anything that fast. What I want to do here is see how much that x-axis gantry would vibrate or jump. So far everything looks good. Well, I don't see anything really out of the ordinary on there. It looks pretty good. I may try another file just for fun. This is a mandala, has a lot of fine lines. I'll get to see if I've got anything jumping around or I'm getting wavy lines or anything goofy just by looking at this after it finishes. Yep, looks good. This little test here, just making a little mini grid so I can see if all my lines are straight and there's no waves in them or anything. Well, my lines on the X travel are wavy, so I need to try to find out why that is. The problem was the eccentric was a little bit too loose, and it was letting the thing wobble a little bit. That problem has gone away now that I made that adjustment. A 10 millimeter wrench. This extrusion must be just a little hair different than the old one. Of course, the old one was worn quite a bit. If anything, I would have thought this one would have been too tight. But it was actually just a little bit too loose on there. And now it's making nice square straight lines every which way, like it's supposed to. So there is what's involved with putting the big extension kit on the longer Ray 5. Again, my Ray 5 was one of the first ones made. I've had it several years. I think that may explain why the legs were drilled a little different. And of course, the 20 watt head I have on here, that was actually provided to me by Longer, and it was a pre-release. So I know if you have a 20 watt, I purchased a 20 watt Longer Ray 5, it'll have that 5-pin cable, not the 3-pin. This was like the early prototype type thing, but it works fine. So there'll be another video coming up on this with the layout grid. I was going to try to do the baseboard, the layout grid and everything in this video, but it would end up being excessively long and you may get bored. So it'll be in the next video, and I have to go to the lumber store anyway and get something to mount this on. I don't have any MDF big enough to use here. So if you got anything out of this, appreciate getting a thumbs up, always helps the channel. I'll put a link in the description on where you can buy this big extension kit from Longer's website. So, I'm Roger in the shop. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.